Background. February 1st, 1968 started out like any other for two fishermen fishing at West Alton Lake, which is in St. Charles County, Missouri. The pair spotted a black suitcase that was floating around 12 feet from the bank. They probably thought they might find some hidden gems or merely some rubbish that someone had wanted to dispose of. What they found was not a hidden gem, nor was it rubbish. It was a body of a toddler who would come to be known as the West Alton Jane Doe. The suitcase had been tied up with blue clothesline and weighed down with 4 10-pound exercise weights, 2 on the inside and 2 more attached to the outside. Whoever had disposed of the suitcase did not want Jane Doe to be found. As the investigation went on, the little girl remained nameless, leading authorities to call her the West Alton Jane Doe, or the St. Charles County Jane Doe. She has been unidentified and without her true identity for 51 years. Identifying features. Jane Doe was white, approximately 2 to 3 years old, stood at around 2'8", weighed between 35 and 40 pounds. She had long, strawberry blonde hair, and her eye colour is listed as undetermined. Jane Doe also has one abnormally large tooth and a scar above one eye. However, I cannot find it listed which eye this is. When she was found, Jane Doe was only wearing a pair of white underwear, possibly indicating that Jane Doe had been abused or neglected due to the lack of clothing in such cold weather. Upon her autopsy, it was revealed by the coroner that Jane Doe had no obvious signs of trauma, and they listed her cause of death as strangulation. In one article I found, it also mentions that large amounts of water were found in her lungs, which couldn't rule out the possibility that Jane Doe was alive when she was dumped, and that she had drowned. Due to her state of decomposition, it was never determined if she had been sexually assaulted. The post-mortem interval is the time that has passed since the person died. Different stages of decomposition can give clues to medical examiners, which can help them determine an estimated time and date of death. In Jane Doe's case, her post-mortem interval is estimated to be around 3 weeks, according to the NamUs website. There is no doubt that her body being in the lake had a profound impact on the state of her decomposition. Interestingly, if the 3-week post-mortem interval is correct, it links to a case that I will be discussing later in the theories section. Investigation. In February of 1968, a man actually did come forward in the belief that Jane Doe was in fact his 3-year-old missing daughter. He revealed to law enforcement that the young girl and her mother had been missing for 8 weeks, and the man had no idea where they had gone. Sadly, Jane Doe would remain unidentified as the missing girl, and the woman were not linked to Jane. Sadly, due to Jane Doe being found in 1968, there isn't much more information that the police could have obtained. DNA was not an option at the time, and the most they probably could have done was blood group typing, which is unlikely to have led them to an identity. Due to the lack of information in this case, the theories heavily outweigh the facts, and I will be going through some of the theories now. Some of them include theories that I found online, and some of them include my own personal opinion. Now, the inclusion of my own personal opinion isn't to cause offence or anything, so if you don't like personal opinion stuff, perhaps, click away from the video. So, a Reddit user by the name of True Crime and Coffee posed the following questions. After 50 years, how has this small child gone missing with no reports of children missing from daycares, families, or foster homes? 2. Due to there being no signs of outward trauma, is it possible that she was murdered by someone who cared for her and didn't want to make her suffer? Perhaps a young teen parent or an addict that had accidentally killed the child? 3. Was the way her body was discarded a clue to who killed her? Put inside a suitcase, tied closed, and weighed down with 20 pounds, or 40, in order to conceal her from being found. If it was a serial killer or someone who cared for her, I believe the body would have been placed in an area that could have been revisited. Obviously, that seems a very conflicting question as to, the second question, whether it was someone who did care for her. But because in this circumstance we just have no information, all we can do is speculate and just throw different aspects and angles out there. One, if not the most prevailing theory, is that our little Jane Doe came from an abusive family, or a family who simply did not want her around. It explains the callousness in which she was disposed, and also the fact that no one reported her missing. Another theory, which links to the last one, perhaps her family or caretakers told others that she simply went to live with other relatives in a faraway part of the state or the country, and no one questioned it. Jane Doe could also have been the victim of human trafficking, either taken from another part of the state or even the country and trafficked all the way to Missouri, where she was killed, either by the person or people who had kidnapped her. She also could have been killed by the person who caught her from the trafficking ring, in a hypothetical sense. Due to the state of her body, it's never actually been determined if she was sexually assaulted. So, in my eyes, this theory cannot be ruled out because we don't have evidence to say otherwise. It's just a theory to consider. There is also another Jane Doe who was found in May of 1968, just 30 miles downriver from where West Alton Jane Doe was found. She was found floating in the Mississippi River, just 4 miles south of the Jefferson Barracks Bridge, by a riverboat pilot who towed her to the Barber Metal Boat Works. Jane Doe was aged between 25 and 45, white, 5'8", weighed 140 pounds, and had dark hair that was possibly dyed, and her natural colour was possibly light brown. Due to the state of her body, her eye colour is also unknown. Jane Doe is said to have been well-developed, well-nourished. An X-ray showed a medical object that was possibly a hearing aid in her left ear. Now this is where this Jane Doe links to the West Alton Jane Doe. Interestingly, the Jane Doe that I've just mentioned, who was found in May of 1968, had a fish mouth cervix, which, according to medical information, happens after a woman has given birth. So what are the chances that a toddler is found just 30 miles away from where a grown woman, so 25 to 45-year-old woman, is found? This woman has a fish mouth cervix, and it's also noted that the woman's body was weighed down as well. It just seems very suspicious. It seems like perhaps the suitcase had floated down river and the woman's body hadn't. It just seems like there's too much of a connection to not be one, if that makes sense. I have actually reached out to the St. Charles County police department. I sent them an email sort of highlighting the fact that there could be a link. Even if they linked these two cases together, that's not for definite that they'll even know their identities. They could be linked, but because neither identity is known, it could lead to nothing or it could lead to something. So hopefully both these cases will be solved in the near future, and I hope I'll be bringing you an update video on this one. The final possible theory/identity I want to talk about is Elizabeth Ann Gill. Elizabeth was last seen in the front yard of her Cape Girardeau home in Cape Girardeau County, Missouri, on Sunday, June 13, 1965. Elizabeth was described as 2 years old, white, around 2'6", 22 pounds, with light brown hair and blue eyes. She also had a chickenpox scar on her right elbow. This is something that's not listed on the West Alton Jane Doe description, however. There are some differences in the cases, but it would be interesting to know if the police have ever formally ruled out Elizabeth as being Jane Doe. Aftermath. Jane Doe was laid to rest in the Oak Grove Cemetery in St. Charles County shortly after her discovery in 1968. She was buried in an unmarked grave, only adding to the heartbreak of this case. On September 24th, which was a Thursday, 2015, St. Charles County Detective Stephanie Fisk was given permission to exhume Jane Doe's body in order to attempt to obtain DNA. Fisk plans to test this DNA against the samples of missing children reported from 1960 onwards. Here is a quote from Fisk. it wouldn't be something that we could just put her in the database and then all of a sudden a match would pop up magically. It's something that we would have to purposely match together to see if there's a relation, which, from that direct quote, it led me to want to include the other Jane Doe case that I've mentioned in the theories. Now, the bit to see if there's a relation, that sort of rings alarm bells, so hopefully there will be updates. There is a sprinkle of good news in this case, however, as on November 4th, 2016, Jane Doe was given a full service at the Oak Grove Cemetery, where she had been originally buried without a headstone. Thanks to the kind donations of strangers, Jane Doe was donated a grave, coffin, flowers, and a dove release. Officers and strangers alike all turned up to Jane Doe's service to pay their respects and hoped that one day they might be able to change the headstone from Jane Doe to a name. Detective Fisk also added this comment at the service. Jane deserved to be respected today. She deserved it for 48 years, and we are happy that she is receiving this service that honours her life. Because Jane is still unidentified, we have placed the title, Blessed Child of the St. Charles County Police Department, on her donated marker. We've adopted her now, and she's our family. No matter which theory you believe or subscribe to, it's important that Jane Doe is treated with respect, as we can all agree that this case is beyond heartbreaking. For Jane's case, it may only take the right person to come forward with vital information that investigators need, or it might take a breakthrough in forensic science and forensic biology. We can only hope. If you have any information, no matter how small and insignificant you believe it may be, please contact the St. Charles County Police Department on 636-949-7900, or you can also contact them on 1-800-822-40112. You can also make a tip to the Doe Network, NamUs, I know NECMEC. There are a lot of channels for you to make a tip anonymously if you so wish so. So, thank you for tuning into this week's video. I apologise that it's been sort of 2 weeks without content, just had some personal stuff going on, and this case has taken me quite a while to write. I wanted to make sure that I got it right and that all the details were there. I just wanted it to be perfect, since this case is completely heartbreaking, and just the fact that a 2 to 3 year old can go unidentified for 51 years and no one seems to care about her, it breaks my heart. So, thank you for listening or watching. Remember, you can keep up with me on all of my social media. I'll have them listed down below for you. And remember, stay safe and stay spooky.